Have you ever written something that you never intended anyone else to read? Maybe it was a journal entry. Maybe it was a note on your phone. Maybe it was a letter you never sent. At first, personal writing feels private. It feels like something we do for ourselves. Just one person, one set of thoughts, and a blank page. But this week, we're going to explore something interesting. Even when we think we're writing only for ourselves, we're often imagining a reader. That reader might be a future version of ourselves. It might be someone we miss. It might be someone we're trying to understand. Or it might be a person who doesn't even exist. Whether we realize it or not, audience influences the way we write. It shapes what we say, what we leave out, and sometimes what we're willing to admit. Think about this for a moment. If you were writing about a difficult experience, would you write it the same way for your best friend, your parent, your instructor, and yourself? Probably not. The experience would be the same, but the audience would change everything. You might soften certain details. You might explain more. You might hide something, or you might finally say something you've never said out loud before. That's because audience influences voice. Voice is the personality of the writer on the page. It's the way your thoughts sound when someone reads them. And voice changes depending on who we believe is listening. For example, when we write for someone we trust, we often become more open. When we imagine a judgmental audience, we might become more careful. Sometimes we sound more confident than we actually feel. Sometimes we hide uncertainty. And sometimes we discover that we're writing for approval rather than understanding. This is where things get interesting, because audience isn't only about other people. Sometimes the audience is a future version of ourselves. Have you ever looked back at an old journal entry? Maybe something you wrote months ago, or even years ago. Reading it can feel almost like meeting a different person. You recognize yourself, but you also realize how much has changed. Your thoughts changed, your perspective changed, maybe even your values changed. In a strange way, journaling allows us to have conversations across time. We write something today, and a future version of ourselves becomes the audience. Another important idea this week is self-censorship. Now, self-censorship isn't always a bad thing. Writers have a right to privacy. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every experience belongs on the page. But sometimes we hold back without even realizing it. Sometimes we avoid certain topics, certain emotions, certain questions, not because we're protecting ourselves, but because we're imagining how someone else might react. And when that happens, our writing can become less honest. One of the goals of reflective writing is becoming aware of that process, not necessarily changing it, just noticing it. Who am I imagining as my audience right now? How is that influencing what I'm writing? What feels easy to say? What feels difficult? Those questions can tell us a lot about ourselves. One thing I find fascinating about personal writing is that it often moves back and forth between private and public. A journal entry might begin as a conversation with yourself. Then suddenly it starts sounding like you're explaining something to another person. A letter might begin as a message to someone else, then become a way of understanding your own thoughts. The audience shifts, and the writing shifts with it. The more aware we become of those shifts, the more intentional we become as writers. Because good writing isn't only about choosing words, it's about understanding who we're speaking to and why. And sometimes the person we're speaking to is ourselves. Before we finish, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Who do you usually imagine as the audience when you write? A specific person, your future self, or no one at all? Have you ever changed something you wanted to write because you imagined someone else reading it? Do you think people are more honest when writing for themselves or for someone else? If you could write a letter to your future self, what is one thing you would want them to remember? And finally, what topic is easiest for you to write about honestly, and what topic is the most difficult? Thank you for watching. As you work through this week's activities, pay attention not only to what you're writing, but also to who you're writing for. Sometimes the audience we imagine reveals just as much as the words we put on the page. I'll see you in the next lesson.